Hello and welcome. For today's lesson, we're going to talk about how to make ellipses in perspective. Now, this technique can be used to make cylinders and pipes and all kind of cylindrical shapes in perspective. Now, what I have here is I have pre-drawn out the X and plus formation that we have used for cube division and cube multiplication. But this time, we're going to use it for creating ellipses. Okay? So what you need to know with this method, which is called the 8-point tangent method, is you're going to have to define 8 points, right? 8 points on your cube that you have constructed. Now, 4 points are very easily identifiable. They're very easily identifiable. 4 points are on the edge plane, right? The edge of the plane of your shape. So if this is your left plane, it's on the edge, right? So the left edge, top edge, right edge, and bottom edge of this shape. That's where 4 points are at, okay? The other 4 points are in this X formation here. Now, a good rule of thumb is to kind of visually see inside this X formation, visually see that you want to crop out that section into thirds, okay? And you want to kind of use that as a guideline. It is not an absolute, okay? It is not an absolute. I want to stress that it is not an absolute. Otherwise, you'll end up with something kind of like this, where it's kind of wonky. So you got to keep that in mind and hold that idea with a grain of salt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of quickly draw out what I think to be these dimensions in thirds. Right? And I'm going to lightly draw out my curvature. Now, this is going to be kind of tricky. The reason why is because this is not a perfect cube, so I'm not going to get a perfect circle. It's going to be more of an ellipse, even if it was facing forward. Even if I was seeing this left plane facing the viewer, if it became the front plane, this would be more of an ellipse because this is not a perfect cube. So you got to bear that in mind and hold that with a grain of salt here. So as you can kind of see, I'm going slightly below that third mark. And I'm trying to maintain a nice curvature of the line. And again, you're going to have to manipulate the line a little bit and kind of tweak it as you go. So I'm drawing and redrawing the area, making sure that I have a pretty good curvature of the line. I think this is nice, but I feel that my curvature is kind of arcing too much. I know that when I go up, I'm going to hit and go past this line. So I probably have to lower this line, this curve line a little bit so that it hits this fourth tangent point. It's not the fourth. So this is a very nuanced technique, and there's no absolutes. It takes a little bit of trial and error, right? As you can see, I've kind of tweaked it. I think this looks pretty nice. Now, what I got to worry about is this bottom area. It's kind of feeling a little wonky here. So I'm going to draw this out a little bit. So I'm going to go past that area some more to what I think feels like a good curvature of the line. Now, as you can see, it's not perfect, but what we're looking for is close enough, right? We're going to try outlining it in black marker here. And hopefully I'm able to make it here. So I'm going to outline it in black marker. So I'm being very light. I don't want to be overly confident. And I tend to do better ellipses going, better curved lines going downward as opposed to upward. So I'm trying to get my paper in a position that I feel confident enough to do the curvature. And you got to bear in mind that I'm far away, so I'm drawing really far away. My arm's extended fully out. If I get too close, my head's going to be under the camera here, and it's going to look weird. There we go. So I've tried making this video like 4 times. Each time just got worse and worse. And you think it'd be easy to explain. Like, it's hard to explain this via words. You know? Like, to do this, it's to write this down on paper and say, well, first, now you got to make this curved line touch that top line and make sure that it intersects through there. And then you got to be finesse your way to the bottom, the right side of that right edge, which is the leading edge of the square. And then make sure it curves ever so to the bottom edge of that curve. So it takes a little bit of finesse. Now, what you want to try to do is, let's try doing another one. Okay, this time we're going to try to do an ellipse on the top. I'm going to erase these areas here just a little bit so it's a little bit cleaner. All right. Again, the ellipse form is all dependent on how square your cube is. So if your cube is not square, if you have a right plane that goes out this far and you do this X formation and you're expecting a circle, you're not going to get it. You're going to get a really wide ellipse. But if you have a square more like this, you have a pretty stable circle or a pretty stable ellipse. But if it gets really far out like this side, it's going to be like distorted. But this one's okay. If I were to do this side on this cube, there's going to be more of an ellipse form as opposed to this side, which is more square, okay? So all this is very subjective, and you want to be very tactful with how you draw these out, okay? I know what typically happens is when we do this, we'll rush it, right? And then we'll have something kind of like this, right? Where these angles feel like points. You don't want to do that. You want to take your time and really try to make those curves curvilinear, right? You got to be extra sensitive to that slight nuanced curve, okay? And typically when we're first starting out, as we get to these edges here on the 8-point tangents, they get really kind of pointed. It's because we need to really play around with getting that curvilinear line there. So it's very nuanced, it's very subjective on how it's being executed. So this time we're going to do it again. So I'm going to do the top area, and it's going to be a little distorted and a little more challenging. So I'm going to think this is probably the thirds right here. That feels like a third. This feels like right here. I'm cutting these X lines into thirds again, right? And I'm going to use it as a guideline. It's not an absolute. I'm using it as a guideline to determine my form. So I'm going to draw this out with a pencil very lightly to kind of see where these lines kind of curve and how I can make this ellipse feel believable. So it takes just a, as you can see, I'm kind of going through the motions. One thing that about these demos is it's not like I go home every night and practice how to make ellipses on using the 8-point tangent method. I know the principle, I understand the concept, but just like everyone, I don't always practice these things. So yes, I'm a little bit more adept at it, but I still have to spend some time and play around with it a little bit so it looks visually like an ellipse, and it looks like the ellipse that goes on the top plane of this shape. I think this feels about right. I might have a few hiccups here. I'm probably not making this area, giving much credit on this back area that much, but I think it's going to work, right? So let's try this again. We're going to try drawing this out. See, I'm gonna go slow. So as I said, I'm really pretty good at doing ellipses. Going in a downward, with my hand movement going downward. So I'm better at doing that. So that's not bad. I'm gonna try it again here. So that's where I kind of got a hiccup. So you notice how the edge is it's definitely strong. It's kind of sharp there. I didn't do the curve as much. So I'm kind of mitigating that with a little bit of line quality. Kind of covered it up there. Again, I don't go home like, let's go make some ellipses here. I don't go home at night and make ellipses every day. All I'm concerned about is being able to understand the concept, and I hope that you're understanding the concept as well. And I messed up. So, markers, I don't like you today. But the idea is there. So as you can see, I messed up, partially because I'm drawing far away, and I didn't spend near as much time addressing the curvilinear lines as I did on the first one. But let's bring it back. Let's see if I can be successful in one more try. Again, determine the 4 tangents, the 8 points. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 on the plus, and now you got to determine the other 4 on the X formation. Remember, you want to break that down into thirds and use that as a guideline. And it's so funny about these videos is they never show them messing up. They always edit it out. Unfortunately, editing your video takes time, and my videos, I don't have such sweet luxury as to afford myself the time to edit out me making a mistake via drawing. So I hold that mistake proudly with a badge of honor. So what I'm doing is I'm going to try to address the curvilinear. So what you don't know right now is there is a light bulb right in front of my eye where the phone mount is holding this. And so like I'm looking at this with my left eyeball. So that's one of the interesting things about these videos that probably people don't tell you about. So my curvilinear line is going to be a little awkward here. That looks okay. I'm going to have to exaggerate a little bit as I curve down. Now I'm starting to feel like when I get to this area, it's going to be really awkward. So I got to be very sensitive to it. And hopefully I can make it feel like a normal ellipse. That's pretty good. It's not great. So as I stated earlier, this is really humorous to me. Is like when I'm drawing this, I'm drawing it like this handicap where I have this light, this like phone stand or phone holder right at my face, and I'm trying to do a complex movement in a compromised position. So I'm finding it very difficult to do the action that I need to do. So this looks okay. Maybe I can fix this boo-boo here. We're gonna mark this. Oops. So oops, I made a mistake. So now we're gonna try doing this again. Hopefully I'm gonna get a little lower. Maybe I won't get. Hopefully I won't get in the frame. So as I said earlier, you want to use it as a guideline. I've kind of marked out where the areas that I think are cutting this into thirds, right? So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And I think I've got the curvature in a decent enough that I can draw out with my marker here. So I'm gonna take my time, kind of draw out slowly. Try not to pause too much, because if I hold the marker here, the paper is going to like suck up all the pigment. So whenever you're doing this, sometimes it's always good to get your hand in a position that you know you can successfully pull that curvilinear line. Right? So you got to be very mindful of that. You don't want to draw your curved lines where it becomes difficult to do. So there we go. That's a little bit, I got a little bit of a bleed right here, but that's fine. I can kind of fix that. And that's not that good, but I'll allow it. So what I missed here is I didn't make the curve as graceful in this area. So you got this kind of sharp edge, ever so subtle. Again, this is probably every 3 months I have to do this. And because of that, it's not like I'm well trained in in executing these drawings in the ellipse form, right? But this turned out pretty good. Hopefully this sheds some light on how to make ellipses, and maybe you should try doing it and find out how difficult it is to actually make these things sound and curve, make the curvature. I'm burying myself a hole, to be honest with you. I'm trying to think about different ways to explain it other than curvy. Anyhow, I hope you're able to use this to your advantage, and maybe you might want to use it to create pipes or vases or bottles or cups in perspective, you know, or donuts or whatever you you want to do with this technique. Have a wonderful day.